Okay, I'm actually starting a couple minutes early because I want to get you guys out of here at least a couple minutes early. There are empty seats to my left and your right. And this is hands down one of the weirdest rooms I've ever presented in. I've been doing this a really long time. I got to tell you, I'm sorry to you guys on the ends. I'll wave at you from time to time. This is weird. Thank you for coming out. It's a odd time slot to get right before lunch. For anybody who had lunch here yesterday, I'm sure you found out there was a bit of a competitive advantage to those who got out first. It is my honor and privilege to try to give that to you. So I'm going to take what's about 17 days worth of material that was boiled down to an hour, and we're going to cut about 15 minutes of it out to try to give you a little head start. If you want to stay and ask questions, I'll stay here to the bitter end. I don't need to eat lunch. It's okay. I can take it. So, a couple of pieces of mechanics here. Okay. Get my timer working. So, my name's Steve Cohen. I'm with Microsoft. I am the Chief Architect for Worldwide Public Sector. This is a really irrelevant title. As it turns out in Microsoft, there's no such thing as a Chief Architect, really. They gave some of us the title. It's cool. Love that. Didn't change my pay any. Damn it. But I am an architect. I'm not an enterprise architect. I'm not a solution architect. I'm not an infrastructure architect. I'm not a business architect. I'm not an information architect. I am merely an architect. And that is the first part of the problem. The problem we have right now in the world of architecture is too many damn titles. Don't care. Specialization is good. You need to know your stuff. You need to have depth. But to build a thing, we need all of this architecture to work. Not just a piece of it, all of it. So today, we're going to do something, well, hopefully interesting for you, certainly weird for the industry, but something I'm particularly passionate about, if that's not clear, and it's to address one thing and one thing, well, two things. First of all, I kind of hate PowerPoint slideware. So this, if I can make him go, click. This is my entire slide deck. Thank you. Thank you all. Good night. This is not a PowerPoint presentation. It is not particularly something you're going to duplicate right away. There is a core thing in here we'll get to in a minute. I'll post it somewhere where you all can get it. But this is about being real. Architecture has a great reputation for being the high and mighty ivory tower thing, for being useless guidance at the beginning, for being that stuff that people tell you to do and nobody really does. Architect among architecture, or architecture among architects, we love it. This is awesome. It's got depth and detail and color and emotion. It's music. We are the conductors of an orchestra. And when it goes well, it's this beautiful symphony of software that delivers stuff to people. Love that. Nobody else thinks about that way except us, right? This is us talking to us. Everybody else thinks we're a pain in the ass, right? We set the rules. We tell them what they can't do. We go behind them and say they did badly. There's a lot of bad ways to be an architect. So, a couple of things. How many people in the room have the title architect somewhere in their title? Excellent. How many people have something like project manager, program manager, portfolio manager? Managers, you can confess, be proud, it's all right. Right? How about tester, QA, tech writers? God help me, please bring me tech writers. We love tech writers. Excellent. Architects play with everybody. Our role by itself is irrelevant. We're supposed to make things better for everybody else. Everybody from the users, right? Not the guy who pays us, but the people they're trying to serve. The guy who pays us, we're supposed to be there happy too. Your CXOs, CIO types, and then every other role involved in the entirety of the life cycle. So from let's get together and see how we can solve a problem for people, all the way through, look, we're solving the problem for people. That's architecture. Every place, everywhere in the life cycle. Okay. A little bit of a rant. Let's get to rant number 34. I have multiple jobs in my job. It breaks into roughly 3 parts. The first third, I do things like this. I teach, I present, and I try to make the industry better. And I recommend all of you who are passionate about this, this should be part of your job too. The second part, the smallest part. So I'm called on by Microsoft Sales to be the technical guy to go speak to our customers. I can't say I hate that part. Sometimes it's actually really fun, but it's not very fulfilling for me. The third part, I'm the fixer. I'm the guy you call when things go bad. I mean, really bad. You spent $100 million on something, 80% of your timeline, and it's not working. This, statistically, is 70% of the projects on the world. So the first thing you do is you call your favorite consultants. You spend some more money, you give them some time, they tell you they're going to do it, and nothing happens. They take your money and leave. Then you call the high-end consultants, the ones you didn't want to pay for the first time. But okay, we'll get the big guns. If you bring them in, they take a lot of your money, they also fail to deliver, and you leave. So the next step, obviously, is to sue Microsoft. As it turns out, Microsoft's been sued as long as I've been alive, pretty much. Somebody's been suing us. When that happens, inside of Microsoft, less than 1% of our company is a thing called Microsoft Services. We come out into the real world and we get real stuff done. Ta-da! As it turns out, the first thing you do when you go to sue Microsoft is they send you Microsoft Services or some of our Premier Services guys. And they come out and try really hard and find out by then the politics, the legal stuff, the contract stuff is all out of control. They can't get it done. I'm the last guy you call. If I show up on your site, there's 2 things you need to know. Somebody's done something very bad, okay? And I'm going to find you, and you will lose your job. Bad things happen, okay? I should not be there. If I'm there, somebody screwed up. They got to pay. The second thing is, I don't fail, ever. I've been doing this for 30 years. I have a 100% delivery record for 2 very easy reasons. I know when to say no. If your house is on fire, sometimes the answer is let it burn, save the neighbors. And the second is, I never give up. Ever. Never, ever give up. The number 1 reason for project failure is not technical failure. It's not architectural failure. It's not a design failure. It's a failure to have the guts to stick it out and do the hard work. Horrible. Terrible. Why can't we just stay there? We should have liability. Right now we don't, except me. As a Microsoft representative, when I come on site and say, I'm going to do this for you, I am now liable, legally liable. And I never give up. Part of never giving up is having good documentation so other people can do the work, because these are big projects. Most of my programs range between 100 and 500 people involved in getting it done. Usually the 300 range is pretty common. Every once in a while it's 5. It really does vary. But the bottom line is there's a bunch of people involved. And as it turns out, when architecture comes together, it's not one thing. So let's go on to rant number 48. Show me your architecture. This is my first question. I come to your house, something's going on, I find the architect and I say, please, oh God, show me your architecture. And what happens? Well, let's go to the whiteboard. And I start to draw. It's like, stop. That's an illustration. Show me your architecture. Well, I've got this beautiful PowerPoint. No! And that PowerPoint better be 800 PowerPoints. Show me your architecture. Architecture is a set of things. It's multiple views and viewpoints. It supports multiple constituencies. There is no chance you're going to get one document to cover all of this stuff. So admittedly, I'm an old guy. I've been doing this for a while. When I started doing this, architecture looked like this. Everybody remember these? 3-ring binder, okay? Architecture, it was a thing you put together and people other than you could go read it. And when they had questions, they found you. And we started with a thud every time. You got stuff, you put it together, and you printed it out. And then we all started screaming about how hard it was to keep that in check. Well, as it turns out, real architecture takes more than one of these. The first one is simply the context. Volume 1 is to put together the stuff around the problem. It's to be able to look at the industry. It's to be able to look at the company in its business context. It's to be able to look at the problem shaped across a broad array of those problems. It's not the actual thing. For that, we have Volume 2. Volume 2, equally big. That's the problem. This is a description of why you're going to do this thing. I know where we are in the context, and now I know why we're doing it. Because if I don't know why we're doing it, I have no idea what it is. There's got to be a reason. Architects work in the service of others. I don't build this stuff for myself. I don't own these things. Sometimes I'm a user. But we work for others. So what's the problem? Why are we there? What are you trying to solve? Are you trying to make more money? Are you trying to make something easier? There's always a problem. We get past that, Volume 3. Volume 3 is a solution. It's all that stuff you think you were going to do. It's the guidance that you want to give to everybody, and there's hundreds of people on this team, to go forth and do a thing. But now, because we've got Volumes 1 and 2, I have traceability. I have justification. Good architects can justify their choices. You don't come in and say, hey, I think we should use Silverlight. Yeah, it's been around a long time. It's stable. We should use Silverlight. Why? Stable's not the answer. It's not even the beginning of the answer. You got to have a reason to pick the technologies. You have to have a reason to pick the parts. You have to have the reason to do the work, a reason to pick the structure. It has to hang on something, and that hang comes from Volumes 1 and 2. But we're good architects. We don't just do good architecture, we do great architecture, which requires Volume 4, operations. It's going to fall. Oh well. This is how it works. Now I built this thing and I want you to do something with it. This is how you patch it. This is how you maintain it. This is how we're going to rev it. This is how we're going to release it. This is the promotion cycle. It's ALM. It's all of the stuff that makes sure that the first one goes great and maybe the second one will too. Architecture through the whole life cycle, we own all 4 of these volumes. Now, that's interesting, right? But let's face it, we can do better than a 3-ring binder. And for that, I introduce you to OneNote. Oh. This is nothing but virtual 3-ring binders. And this is the center of my universe. This is an architecture. All of this stuff in one place, and here's the real miracle, we can all work on it at once. I do work for Microsoft. I will be referencing a lot of Microsoft products. I'm sorry, this is not a sales pitch. This is just the way I happen to do it. You can do it your own way. It's cool. No complaint. I open up OneNote on Office 365. I invite you all to it. And now we can all see everybody else's stuff. Everybody gets to take their expertise, whether you're the infrastructure person or the taxonomy person. And you can provide that in one place where we can all see it and start to adjust our stuff based on your stuff. Now, if you are a master architect, of which technically there are none, by the way, worldwide there's 2 bodies that say architects are good and bad, and none of them have the level master. Go figure. You should be able to do all this stuff and do it all yourself. It's rare, extremely rare. This is a team sport. You can't even build a phone app alone anymore. It takes everybody. You need the security people, you need infrastructure people, you need software people working together, and that's the architect's job. That means the thing we build, the architecture, the deliverable, this is what people pay for. A thing that if you leave, they can read without you. So, back to the earlier question, show me your architecture means give me this giant set of stuff and leave me alone. I should be able to interpret it and understand what your goals were, get your justification from it, see where the decisions are, understand the trade-off analysis, and then come back and talk to you. Now well grounded in your world. It's not complicated, but, and this may be embarrassing, has anybody in the room ever done this? Okay, I want your emails and I want you to send it to me. I'm serious. I love seeing real architecture, and it's unbelievably rare. Put it together, put it someplace on a share, and send me a link. I promise I will review it and give you as much feedback and positive support as I can. Free consulting. How often do you get that? So, as we look at this thing, it's got all the stuff. And before I get into it, I want to emphasize this is not a template. This is not a checklist. I'm about to go through it more or less sequentially, but it is not a sequential operation. This is 100% randomness. You're going to gather things as you find them. You're going to look for them because you notice they're missing, and you're going to update everything you find every time you find anything. In the world of living documents, that's what living means. You got to keep going back to it. But since it's online, and since it's on Office 365, it's available on all platforms. It's just not that hard anymore. Just go do it. But spend the time and get into it. Now, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. For this to be a hardcore session, I have to talk about a thing, a real architecture. A real architecture against a real project. I've got a lot of customers, and they're all governments, state, local, federal, international, education, healthcare. None of them want me showing you their stuff. So I made something up. I love to make stuff up because I'm never wrong that way. Did I mention I'm a consultant? So what I've made up is this thing that strikes near and dear to my heart. I happen to like coffee. I like coffee a lot. Some people all talk about, let's go to the pub and grab a pint. No, no, no. I want to find the best coffee in the city. And that's what I do. But as it turns out, as a real traveling consultant, I'm on the road some 300 days a year. I don't know where the best coffee in the city is. It's surprisingly difficult to figure out because most people's taste in coffee, as it turns out, is not very good. It's all right. I think there should be a better way. Let's say we're going to build an app. So I made up a customer, which turned out to be somewhat realish, purely accidentally. First time I had this conversation on a session like this, I was in Seattle, Washington. And I made up a fictitious group called the Baristas of Seattle. And then I went online. Shockingly, they're real. I didn't know. It's not my fault. But if we look up the Baristas of Seattle, we should end up with the Baristas of Seattle Society, not the bikini guys, sorry. All right, there they are. Seriously, this is live. This is real. I'm not making this up. These people exist. But they don't have a website. All they have is a Twitter feed. So they're not very big. But I think great coffee comes not from Starbucks or a company. Great coffee comes from great baristas. So I wanted to find, how can I find my great barista? Why can't I put together a little application around that? I should be able to pick up my phone, say, I'm here, find me the nearest great barista. Tell me how far away I am, show me the menu. I want to be able to place my order. It should go in queue. They should be able to determine the amount of time it takes to make that kind of coffee, queue it up, and when I walk through the door, it should be just magical. The perfect cup of fill in your favorite kind of coffee. So I started building the app. I started architecting this application. Well, the first thing I did is I wanted to go out and learn about the stuff. And gee whiz, I pasted that first thing straight in from the website. Not rocket science. And then I went out and looked for business plans for coffee shops. As it turns out, there are a lot of them. It's amazing what you can learn on the internet. I visit customers over and over again. While I'm here at this conference, I'm visiting a couple. And the first thing I do is I open up Bing, yes, Bing, and I search for them. And I learn stuff about them. And it's the beginning of every piece of architecture, understanding the context. So I like to consider this first part where we're basically ignorant. Volume 1 is all about solving the ignorance. I need to know about your industry. I need to know about your problem space. I need to understand how you deal with your world. Picking the wrong machine. Has anybody heard of pestle analysis? Pestle? Sometimes it's just pest. I really do need to see your architecture. Hand keeps coming up, man. Now you're on my radar. So basically, it's political, economic, social, technical, legal, and environmental. Pestle. And I started surfing around. Again, not hard. And it's amazing what's out there in the universe. It turns out that coffee shops changed the world, according to them. Coffee shops created a social place. It wasn't about the coffee, it was about the gathering. This explains why Starbucks tastes so bad, but has great Wi-Fi. They are more involved with the experience. It's actually Starbucks' business model to draw you in and give you a place in a community. It's their goal. And by the way, they serve coffee. And it's not horrible coffee, it's just not great coffee. I shouldn't pick on Starbucks as much as I do. It's about a place, and it turns out the industry is concerned about this. It gives you a new context of thinking about the problem. And here I am talking about a mobile app that works across multiple places. How do you think the industry is going to see that? Do you think they want an app where McDonald's and Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks and Gloria Jeans show up in the same list? It's part of the pressure on the architecture. You need to understand the space. There's a guy named Cranfield who turned out this thing called a business dependency network. And this is kind of great. If anybody's ever seen this, if people have seen this, you've seen this, I know you have, you've raised your hand every other time. There's a column missing here. The last column is products. This is used by Microsoft and other sales teams all the time to show how we go from what you wanted to our products. I think that's stupid. I'm not a sales guy for a reason, because, oh my God, who could make the jump to products now? Really? How could you possibly know? The first one, the what do you want to do thing, that's straight off their website. I get that. I can justify that. That's a real thing. What you gain, what you want, I start making these things up. What makes you act, I can kind of derive, and it starts to map these pieces together. This is what we use in the architecture to start doing a justification of our actions. How do I get from the left side to the right side? It's not the only thing, but it's an important thing. And you don't have to use this model, but you need to use something, and you need to document it, and you drop it on here, and you tell everybody about it. And you'll be amazed the kind of feedback you get, because this, as it turns out, is pretty easy. And everybody's got an opinion. Well, there's a bigger view of the world. The ability to put this one application in context of all the applications used by this customer. Now again, fictitious customer, completely made up by me, in no way represents Microsoft, its subsidiary corporation, partnerships, or vendors. I made this up. Not only did I make it up, the data behind this, and this is complete transparency, there it is totally made up too. But it gives me a way to say, here's how I'm going to weight things, right? Here's how they put together. Here's how you are looking at your investments broadly. And as it turns out, because I'm sneaky, the numbers make it so the labels don't overlap anything. Because at the moment, that was the most important thing I was doing. We need to get this because we need to understand, again, the context. This is just volume 1, right? What and why are we doing this? So, TOGAF. Any TOGAF people here? All righty. I'm actually impressed by that. TOGAF is great. I love TOGAF. TOGAF has a thing called first principles. First principles are basically a handful of things that you use to guide every other decision. Today, I happen to be working with the Los Angeles County Unified School District to do a big project. I went in and said, what are your first principles? And I expected them to say things like, educate the student. Because, you know, it's a school district. Turns out that's not true. It's another problem. So I made my first principles up. What we do in software will go in this priority order. We'll do the student, the teacher, the school, the administration, and then IT last. That's my set of priorities. They're in that order, and it's important. It's important because I'm about to make a bunch of decisions about your architecture. Why am I making the decision? Why have I put something ahead of something else? Well, look, check out our first principles. TOGAF gives you a structure. As it turns out, the industry has a tremendous amount of these things out on their websites. Again, bing, not hard. Go find it. This whole thing, by the way, I did all of this research in less than a week, and I did it while I was on vacation, and I did it on a cruise ship. I confess this. It's a great way to do work if you can. It means I worked about 20 minutes a day, and I found all this stuff when I had connectivity. Just go do it. When somebody tells me they haven't done it, all I want to do is reach out and slap them. But I'm a professional consultant, and I would never do that. That would be wrong. Starbucks has got the most robust principles available. Almost all of this is about green, right? Being energy efficient, not cutting down the trees, being sustainable. And that's cool. It gives us reasoning. So we get some idea, and by the way, there are other stuff in here about the context. I'm not going to go through each and every one of these one at a time. We simply don't have the time. I think you want lunch. We talked about that earlier. The idea that we've got the context in place, now we have to actually define our problem. And this is going to sound a little crass, but if you haven't figured it out, I am. Crass, that is. The statement of work in the contract defines the scope of your activities legally. Period. It's just not that complicated. If you go to do an architecture for somebody and you are doing it for free or internally, write it down. It's okay. You don't have to be paid to do this, to have a statement of work. Write down the deal because you need people to buy in on it. Make them sign a paper physically. It emotionally binds them to this thing. Write it down. Make a contract. If you can't show me your problem statement, then there is no answer. What you have is activity. Congratulations, you're employed. You will never deliver anything successfully. Everybody will always have a reason to say you're wrong, but if you start up front and say, this is what we're going to work on, this is the general areas and scope, then maybe you can achieve that and everybody can have a party and move on. There's a big need for personas in our industry. Architecture started out at the bit level. We were gate guys inside of chips. And then we came up onto circuit boards. And we were gate guys outside of chips. And then we finally became architects around networks. And we were gate and router guys outside of machines. And then we got to software because it kind of took over the world. That's all good. But we do this for people. As it turns out, architecture may be the single most human activity in software development. You are serving somebody or set of somebodies. You need to be able to describe them. They need to have a common understanding of what they're going to get and what you're going to do for them. It's about the people, which means if I have people, by the way, I'm going to do this because I kind of love this guy. Way down on the bottom here. It's a guy who works with us named Brian Loomis. All that stuff I just scrolled through is in this slide. This is artwork. I think it's a thing of beauty. When you present this to a customer, like, wow, you really captured it. If you present this to the customer, they're like, what are you trying to tell me? And I guarantee you can read it, like, look at the responsibilities, we've got determined margins and so on, and you scroll down here, and you're like, oh, it's the exact same list. It's exactly the same. But people love that. And it's your job to understand that that's how communication occurs, that you need to adapt to them. Architects, doing architecture in one document, having conversations. Yeah, it's great. There also needs to be a communication plan that allows you to determine how you're going to communicate with who when. You got to have an actors catalog that lists out everybody. You know, in our mythical coffee thing, I've got all these people, the normal shop owners stuff. But you also have people like, you know, different kinds of customers. And you need to write it down so you can start talking about it, more importantly, so you can get to this. If you have an architecture, there's only about 5 things I really look for. I'll give you all 5 eventually, but I will tell you this is number 1. Number 1, testable outcome. How do I know what you built was good enough? What do I measure? And how are you capturing that measure? Again, this is 5 minutes of work. If you struggle over it, it might take you an hour. Pick a thing and give me a direction. It should make more money. It should reduce errors. It can go up and down. But you need to have measures. And these testable measures, they become key performance indicators, KPIs, belong in the architecture. And we're just at the problem part. We jump over to the solution. And I'm actually going to jump over to something slightly more interesting if I can get it to open here. Windows 10, it's my friend. Okay. UML. In the world of architecture, there's no such thing as a standard notation that I'm aware of. Feel free to correct me if you know one. UML is the closest thing we've got for capturing both static and dynamic stuff. I don't expect people to do it. I don't even expect people to know it, but I've personally found it to be pretty useful. There are way better tools than Visio to do this. vastly better tools. I can name them if you'd like. My boss won't get that mad. This was done in Visio because it's what I had on the boat. Okay, back to the cruise. This was my original idea. I wanted to be able to find great coffee. That's me down in the corner. I travel a lot, see? Out of scope. If I talk to the Barista Society, they had these two things. Remember their Twitter feed, that big paragraph? That's all I got. But the miracle occurs when you put these things together. All of a sudden it becomes a thing. A real model with stuff and interaction and people and things. And we can start digging into it. Each of these can, not guaranteed, but can become a piece of architectural construct. So all of these belong somewhere in your architecture. Architect does architecting to make an architecture. Over enunciating. They tell me that's important. As it turns out, there's activities in this thing. And it's okay. If it's complicated enough, capture it and add it to the document. Because later on, at some point, you're going to say, hey, maybe there's something I didn't notice. You see this thing that says order queue and registry? That came out of the discussion about how would I put a coffee order in queue? Well, I got to have queue. And it's not part of what the Barista Society said. And it wasn't part of my original picture, but it's a thing. It's part of the activity. Let's work through that. So somewhere in this architecture, there better be a queue because I know I need to do that. Additionally, you can have these kinds of exciting things. Buy now. This is from a product that's actually called Wireframe. I can't draw a straight line. If it weren't for this thing, it would not look anywhere near this good. It's just an illustration. It's a way to sit down now and start talking again with those same people who love the colorful version of the persona and say, if you had this in your hand, what would you want it to do? How would you get there? How many steps do you think it should take? What are the variances? Do you know when you go to Starbucks, there is a sequence to the order, right? And you can really mess with the guy at the cash register. You can give him the cup size, the coffee type, and then the milk, or any variant thereof. And it freaks him out. You can say, I want a skim milk latte venti. And he'll like stutter because he's got to pick which cup to draw in first, right? So the first thing they want to hear is the size. That's the canvas for them. They grab the cup. Now they've got the pen, and the next thing for them is, what do you want? Well, it's supposed to be a latte. Well, you did it backwards. Skim milk, what's it go into? It does freak him out. It's hilarious. Sick, me sick. Sorry, I shouldn't do that. But the idea is you need to walk through it and find out what these things matter and the sequence that it's supposed to be in, because that's the kind of stuff that matters. And you can start breaking them into now actual like requirements. I'm an Agile guy since there was no such thing as Agile. Most of the signers of the Agile Manifesto are friends of mine. I get it. It's a very important thing. I happen to love Agile when it's done well by people who are smart, which seems to be a minority population. Nonetheless, writing requirements down, important. This is like testable outcomes. Some of these things are a promise you're going to make. We need to see how this works. And there are things that are technical requirements, not just functional requirements. You got to pull it together, and the architect gets to do this. That is probably outside the scope of this conversation. But so the question was, for anybody who couldn't hear it, what do you say to Scrum teams that don't want to generate a lot of technical debt? My first answer is you probably already have, right? Because that's why they talk about it. I'll digress, but I promise I'll get back to the point. Scrum was invented by two guys. Jeff Sutherland's the guy who actually invented it, and Ken Schwaber's the guy who wrote the book about it. They're two very different people. Jeff is a practitioner. Ken is a sales guy. As a practitioner, Scrum is awesome when it's done well. If you follow the gray book, it sucks. The Church of Scrum, where you got to buy like being a certified Scrum Master thing, I kind of personally hate. That's just me, and it's a sidebar. It has nothing to do with the rest of this conversation, sorry. But catch me afterwards. We'll talk at great length if you'd like. So we've got all this stuff. There's requirements everywhere. You do need to have some variant of requirement traceability. Again, we started with volume 1 to get the context. We went to volume 2 to define the problem. Now I'm doing the solutions, volume 3. Like I said, volume 1 was ignorance. We didn't know anything we needed to learn. Volume 2, well, hope. Volume 2, we hope that we capture the problem right. It's just it. Because right now, we're still us. We're trying to pull it all together, and I hope I get it all. I hope I understand. I hope. As it turns out, hope is a terrible plan. Volume 3, well, fear. Because in Volume 3, you start giving it to others. I've taken what I've learned. I take this context. I've pulled in what I can, and I start handing it back out again. And I have nothing but fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And the architect's job at this point is to see if it's all being carried through on, to capture the changes, to understand the decisions being made now beyond them into design. Those testable measures come back in Volume 3, hopefully unchanged. But if they are changed, you need to change them in all the places they exist. Test plan, very important. Conceptual models. This was done a year and a half ago, so it's a little out of date. How do you take a mobile device and place an order for coffee? Well, this is how. You can put that in queue, right? I've got worker tables. I've got all kinds of stuff. As it turns out, Microsoft publishes a bunch of this iconography. Feel free to use it. It's all free. But at the same time, the exact same picture exists this way in the more traditional boxes and lines. And it's captured side by side because views and viewpoints are your friend. We all look at the same thing. We look at it from a different viewpoint, and we have different views. I can have one viewpoint with multiple views. Fair enough? I want to see the architecture pivoted. I want to see it from the user's perspective. I want to see it from the operations perspective. I want to see it from the customer's perspective. I want to see it from a cost perspective. You got to keep spinning it. Every time you find something new, it's probably missing in the other views, you add it. And you keep doing this until you can't add anything else. And then you have a complete architecture that's going to look like the giant stack of paper or virtual volumes. I love this. In this particular case, this weird scenario, as a Microsoft guy using Azure to do this, I have no infrastructure. Thank you very much. I'm buying it all. I'm paying for it all by the night, by the byte, by the pound, however you want to do it. It's all consumption-based. I don't own any hardware. I can make this application. I can host it up on Azure. I don't care what those machines look like. I don't have to hug my hard drives. We have a lot of people that are kind of resistant to this particular change because they're used to knowing their stuff works well because they can walk up to it, hold on to them tight. But brave new world. Sometimes there is no infrastructure, and that's okay. But I can justify this because I have all this other documentation, because I've put it all together. I can walk an infrastructure person through the choices that says, yeah, it's just cheaper, or it's just faster, or I just wanted to. Either way, I can justify it. For anybody who hasn't used a pen on something like the Surface, this has got to be the best thing ever to happen to architects, to be able to draw. So I'm sitting around and I'm thinking, how can I make money selling this coffee app? And there's a lot of possibilities, right? You can sell the app, but I don't know about you, I'm not going to pay $2 for the thing. I'm just that way. I could sell the service to maybe the store owners, but then you only get some stores and not other stores. That may or may not be a great idea. I can sell it to the baristas because it creates a sort of marketplace for baristas where now the baristas are served by being seen as better or worse. They're graded by people who get the coffee. They create a draw for the people who employ them. They should be paid more. There's any number of ways to make money doing this thing. So if you clean it up a little bit, or a lot as the case might be, it starts to look like this. There's any number of ways to put this together. And again, same picture, different pivot. And this is zoomed out way too far. Even worse, even worse. All right. Anybody heard the term mouse run? This is mouse run. And I can't get it back. There it is. Same pictures, different views. And it's okay, they serve different audiences. But how about this? You don't have to make money just doing coffee. And do you guys have Uber here? The car company, like taxis? Yeah, Uber? Cool. Uber's genius. They started out saying, I'm going to be able to give you a car service. And the difference is my relationship with the drivers in the cars. And they did pretty darn good. But the guys who own Uber, genius. They're selling the data. They're selling where they pick you up and where they drop you off. They're selling access to how often you do it and where you go most frequently. Then they got smarter. The data is one thing. How about this? I have this infrastructure that knows how to put things together. They transport stuff. They have a model now called Uber Eats, where you can get them to deliver you food. It's a very narrow menu, at least in Los Angeles where I am right now, but same infrastructure. They have licensed this infrastructure to the taxi companies in the cities they are in, which is hilarious to me because the taxi companies all fought with them. And now Uber is actually making the taxi companies more successful. They're making money hand over fist, and they're moving back from being a car company, a car service. Well, our coffee service is the same thing. Why can't I go out and get my dry cleaning this way? Why can't I tell my dry cleaner I'm on the way, have it pulled off the hook, sitting waiting for me, have it already paid for it, be able to walk up, be identified, hand, leave, go. Better yet, if there's a dry cleaner near my coffee place and I want to do both of them, why can't I compose the service and have the guy in the dry cleaner go 2 blocks away, hand it to the coffee guy when I come through, get my piping hot version of whatever, pick up my dry cleaning it's already paid for, and leave? That would be awesome. That would revolutionize my life. Well, it's probably not true, but I'd like it, right? We want to do this, and this is what software and architecture are good for. You go beyond the original need. You see past it and you make it possible. Even if you don't implement it right away, you go and you can build it whenever. So here we go. Any service now. Just a slight variance on a theme. And it's part of the architecture. You may never build this, but it's in there because it's part of the conversation. You capture it, you present it, you explain it, and you let people make decisions with you about it. The team. I'm inside 10 minutes, but I will not leave the solution without this. How many people here have done actual threat models? Few? If I come back here, when I come back here someday, I would like to see 100% of you with your hand up over this one. This is architecture. Threat modeling takes all these things you already know, the parts, the components, the actors, the activities, and it uses that information differently. It uses it to identify areas of trust, boundaries of where a passing thing and what's going through it, and how you can put those controls in place. Now, you can take this picture. I see people doing it. That's cool. This is a terrible, terrible model. Terrible. Don't build this. Not this one, not this way. It will not be safe. On the other hand, it does help you break out all of the stuff, all of the processes you already know. And it turns out Microsoft's got this thing called the Microsoft Threat Modeling Tool. It's free. Please go take it. Let us give it to you. Let us help you make better, safer planet. You enter the stuff you've already figured out. You've decomposed the problem. You've got a solution. You're breaking it into components. You see the interactions. I have sequence diagrams. I lay it into this tool as well, and it will literally generate the model. And it will turn things red that are bad and let you say, oops, we should deal with that. The architects are as responsible for this as everybody else, if not more so. It's nearly a shame that we're not doing it all right now. So, I've come through ignorance, I've gone through fear and hope, and I go into operations. Operations, completely out of our control. DevOps is great, and DevOps exists during the solutioning phase, and it should be there. If you, as a developer, if you have an architect from the developer side, have never spent a month, 30 days with your infrastructure team, go do that. And if you're an infrastructure architect and you not have spent a month, 30 days with your development team, go do that. It's very enlightening. We should spend more time talking to each other. You can help each other out way before it becomes a problem you have to react to. There's any number of things to be done here. The backup, monitoring, support, instrumentation. Telemetry is free, cheap, and easy right now. Actually, let me back up. Again, it's sort of a Microsoft-y moment. I'm very accustomed to it. On our platform, we've got tools that make this free, cheap, and easy. There are other tools available. They are a little harder, but it should be done nonetheless. You need to instrument your stuff. Your telemetry should be at the infrastructure level for health. It should be at the application level for business KPIs. those testable measures, it should be emitting. Every time that app is used, it should be adding those numbers so you know what's going on. That's how you know you've achieved your goal. All of these things, all 4 volumes, that's an architecture. That's all there is to it. If I come up to your space, once we get past who did the bad thing, or you call me to do an assessment, which, by the way, is at tab 5 I'm not going into right now. There's a whole nother hour's conversation on doing assessment. Happy to do that someday. This is what you need to show people. This is what you're paid to do. Architects aren't just brains on a stick. And it's a favorite term for mine. And people are like, we need the smart guy here. You know, he'll be in the room. They'll take notes and then tell you you're wrong. Now, we're supposed to be actually doing correlation. We're supposed to be looking for causation. We're supposed to be doing statistical analysis. We should be identifying telemetry where it's good and where it's bad. We should be able to do a justification. Trade-offs occur because you talk to your customers. As trade-offs create priorities. Priorities drive decisions. Those decisions should align with the choices you've documented. And all of it happens for nearly free in a OneNote or OneNote-like substance. You can do it on paper. We did for years. That's an architecture. So, with almost no time remaining, I want to get you guys out to lunch. Thank you for sitting through my rant. I will try to post this OneNote somewhere for you guys to get to. I don't know where that is. I'll talk to the organizers to do it. Feel free to flee to get out to get to the food more quickly than everybody else. But if you'd like to stay, I'm happy to take questions. Thank you for your time.